I'll tell you right now, the answer to this question is whatever works for you. For some people, renting can make more sense, and for others, it can be buying. It literally comes down to your situation. With that out of the way, I feel like I can talk about this because I've been on both sides. I've lived in a shitty apartment that I had to move out of because it got too expensive. And now that I'm a realtor, I have access to several multimillionaires, and they all agree that real estate is pretty much the greatest asset ever, whether you're looking at it as an investment or you literally just want to survive. So today, I want to get into the pros and cons of both, as well as what makes more sense from an investment perspective. And hopefully, by the end of the video, you have the information to decide what works better for you. So, getting into the pros of renting, the first thing that comes to my mind is maintenance, because you really don't have to deal with it too much compared to buying a home. Whenever something goes wrong, you can just call your landlord or call your property manager, and they'll usually send somebody out for you. And assuming that you're within your normal scope of everyday wear and tear, you shouldn't have to pay for anything. All you got to do is just be there. This helps add to the affordability of renting a house, because a lot of times renting can be cheaper than buying a house. But aside from just a monetary perspective, this can also be a great psychological bonus as well, because it's just one less burden you have to worry about. When you don't have to worry about maintenance, or really when you don't own anything, you don't have to worry about anything. This takes a big stress off of your shoulders and allows you to live a lot more flexibly. Let's say maybe you're younger or you have to travel a lot for work and you can't be in one spot for too long. Depending on your lease type, renting can give you this needed flexibility. And I mentioned earlier how renting can be cheaper than buying. I want to touch a little bit more on that. Of course, it all depends. I have some people looking right now at rentals that are like $2,200 a month, which is way more than anyone really needs in my area. The average rent price in my area tends to hover around $1,300 to $1,600 a month. You don't have to worry about potential HOAs. You don't have to worry about mortgage insurance, and you don't have to worry about certain taxing jurisdictions. So you can definitely save several $100s each month. And obviously, you can do whatever you want with this money. But if you were to invest this, or maybe save for your own down payment in the future, or pay off debts, I think that'd be a great reason for getting a rental house. You'd be able to leverage your time in this rental for a better life for yourself in the future. With that being said, one thing that I really don't like about rentals is that your landlord can just raise the rent price. Of course, this depends on the lease, but whether it's a month to month or a year to year, at the end of that lease, the landlord does have the right to raise the rent price. And that's on top of the fact that you're still paying all your utilities as well. And I know when you're owning a house, you're still paying your utilities, so it's not marginally any worse or anything, but those are still extra expenses that are added on. And in the case of rental properties, a lot of times you're still going to have to worry about maintaining things like the yard, which is going to cost you time and or money. So you're still going to have a lot of the same expenses and obviously duties to owning a home. Whether that's a pro or a con, I'll let you decide. One thing that people talk about in the whole debate of renting versus buying a house is how expensive it can be to actually buy a house in the first place because of how much down payments can be, which is completely true. And most of the time, your down payment is going to be a lot more expensive than your initial renting fees. But renting a house still has a lot of fees that add up very quickly, which I think is definitely a con. You have your security deposit, you have your rent, you have your application fee, you have your pet fees. Those are all upfront fees that you're gonna need. I just met with this couple not too long ago. They were about my age, so pretty young couple, and they were looking at this property that was about $1,300 a month. So upfront, they're gonna need that $1,300. They're gonna need another $1,400 for the security deposit because it's rent plus $100. They're gonna need another $110 in cash for both of their application fees, and they're gonna need $400 per pet. They have a small dog and 2 cats. So that's another $1,200 for a total of $4,010. That is a pretty damn good chunk of money. And for a lot of people, that is really hard to get. Compared to buying a house, yes, you can put 20% down if you want to get rid of your mortgage insurance, which is a shit ton of money. I know that. Even with only putting 3.5% down on an FHA loan, that's still a pretty good chunk of money. On a $250,000 house, it comes out to about $8,750, which I know is more than double what all of their initial fees were for their rental, but that allows you to build up equity in a home. There are also no money down programs. I won't lie, I haven't done anything with them. I don't know much about them. I don't know if that's necessarily the best financial decision, but it's possible. I also just hinted at the biggest negative of renting, which is lighting money on fire. You're not building equity, you're not building wealth, you're just paying your landlord. This has always been the biggest problem that I've had with renting, and I don't want to turn you off to the idea of renting, but I think if you ask literally anyone, even people who favor renting over buying, they will agree that this is pretty much lighting your money on fire, even if it does make more sense for you. Another thing that I don't think is talked about enough is that yes, rentals are technically more flexible than buying a house, but a lot of the leases in my area are at least a year long. So if you have to leave 6 months in, you're still going to be responsible for the rest of it, or you're going to be in breach of contract. I have had people negotiate shorter 6-month long leases, but that usually comes at the cost of an extra $200 to $300 a month. And I'm not trying to just dog on rentals right now, even though I'm definitely a little bit more leaning on the side of buying a house. But whenever I sat down and looked at the pros and cons of both of them, this is legitimately what I saw. At this point, I think I've spent way too much time talking about renting. Let's look at the pros and cons of buying a house. Let me see what my notes say. Obviously, I'm joking with that, but there's a lot of truth to it. I've probably talked about this 100,000 times on my channel. I'll probably talk about it 100,000 times more. But whenever people talk about building equity in a home, this is what they mean. Let's say you put down 3.5%, an FHA loan, right? Minimum down payment. If the house appreciates at 4% a year, you're getting over a 100% return on your money every single year. Another huge bonus that you get with buying a house that renting doesn't give you is that it's inflation protected, which really any asset is. But with real estate, there's only ever going to be a finite amount of it, but people are always going to need a place to stay. And we know what happens whenever there's high demand and low supply. Look at all of the AI and memory stocks recently. Micron and SanDisk are both up over 1,000% over the past year. So when you own an asset like real estate, the value of it can virtually go up forever, and that's multiplied by the value of the dollar continuously going down. It's something I've talked about on this channel before. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, we have averaged about 3.3% inflation every single year, which has crushed the dollar, but anyone owning assets has benefited tremendously. Think about all the boomers that bought their house with a firm handshake and can now sell it for $1 million. Those are largely the pros when it comes to buying a house. It's been very hard trying to put this video into words because there's a lot of overlap and I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself all the time. But getting into the cons of buying a house, my notes literally say have to fucking deal with HOAs and taxes and maintenance and bullshit. Yes, these things suck. It's just part of owning a house. It's fairly simple, but it's definitely something you have to pay attention to. A lot of times HOAs are pains in the ass and you don't want to pay way too much in taxes. There's a master plan community being built like 12 minutes away from me and their taxes are really high. If I remember correctly, it was over like 10 grand a year. I don't know about other places, but for here, that is a lot. I also want to talk a little bit more about flexibility because I feel like I didn't give renting its justice earlier. Obviously, it takes a while to sell a house. Even if you listed it and got an offer, an accepted offer the exact same day, it's still going to take like another month before it's finalized. But more than that, if you buy a house and you need to sell it within the next year or two, you're probably going to lose money. A couple years really isn't enough time to see actual home appreciation. And on top of that, you're going to have to pay closing costs. You have your title policy, you have your home warranty, you have all your realtor costs. There's so much stuff that gets added onto it that someone's going to have to pay. And even if you split everything down the middle, that's still a good chunk of money that you're just going to be out on. So when you're looking to buy a house, I think you should at least have a 5-year time horizon. You might be able to get away with like 3, but if you're not able to sink several years into a house, it might be a better idea to rent. And if you're looking at this from an investment perspective, this is definitely something to think about. Obviously, this isn't financial advice, but on average, the leveraged gains that you get from owning a house destroy your average market returns from investing into stocks. I feel like there should be more to this, and maybe I'm missing something because I have a bias towards buying houses. I do think that that is the better route to go. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I think on average, buying a house from an investment perspective is going to be a way better idea pretty much every single time. I know people can lose money on houses and trying to flip and things like that. But if you buy a solid house that doesn't have a bunch of issues and stuff in a decent neighborhood and you live in it for a while, you're going to make money on it. I realize there's a lot of caveats with that, but in my opinion, there are really only 2 main times when renting wins as an investment compared to buying a house. And that's when 1, you're not going to be able to stay in it for longer than a year or 2, or you don't know if you'll be able to, or 2, you have really high interest debt that you have to pay off. And I know you can save money and invest it. I know I talked about that. Totally a route to go, but again, even if you're getting really solid returns in the market, I still don't think that's as good as the returns you're going to get with real estate. I'm talking about potential 100% returns in equity versus potential really crazy year in the market, like 20-25% returns. I've been using this mortgage calculator from this lending app that I'm partnered with, but there are tons of calculators out there, from mortgage calculators to rent versus buy calculators. I'll probably link one of those. But just like I said at the beginning of this video, it literally all depends. I am curious, is this a problem that you're currently going through right now, or is there a side that you lean more towards? Let me know. I hope this was enough information for you to make a better decision. If it helps, try writing everything down and putting it in front of you like I did. But I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, consider leaving a comment, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Good luck on your investing journey.